Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Bowma here, serving as military specialist for Carleton County. I'm going to give you another military presentation tonight, the next one on the World War II timeline. This is the Battle of Britain. The Battle of Britain, of course, after the fall in early June of France, the end of May, and in June, France falls to Germany. One country is left in Europe, and that country will eventually stop Germany dead cold. This one country, England, Great Britain, would stand alone, not without the help of allies. Allies coming from exile from Poland, Czechoslovakia, and certainly allies such as from Canada and even the United States would bring in pilots to fight in the Battle of Britain and to help stave and help push back the German Blitz. So since so far, the Allies have been pushed back time and time, defeat after defeat from in Belgium. Certainly in Belgium, the biggest defeat, and then again in France. Certainly Holland defeated, Luxembourg, Norway, Denmark. So far, the Allies have really known nothing but defeat. Not without inflicting German losses on either the German Navy, the Luftwaffe, and of course the German Army. But still, the Blitz has been large. Blitz and Blitzkrieg has been largely successful. So the Battle of Britain. So here's the Blitz during. This is of course during the major German Blitz over. This is in London, and of course the Germans, after targeting airfields for days, Hitler wanted to switch to, of course, from British airfields, the Royal Air AF airfields, to major city centers, including London, to demoralize the British people. As Winston Churchill said it, we will fight them in the air, we will fight them in the sea, we will fight them on the land, we will never surrender. And they certainly did not. Great Britain and the British people, they were not demoralized. They became more determined to fight this enemy and to fight Hitler, fight fascism. So the night bombing raids and the day bombing raids, sometimes they were even, within the 24 always anytime, day and night. The German Luftwaffe would be launching bombers after bomber attacks um, with heavy bombs, 500 kilogram bombs, and even to 250 kilogram bombs. And then, of course, incendiary bomblets, lighting fires over London. Whole areas of London were ablaze. Thousands died, but they did not give up. Here you see the tunnels. More, and then I'll have more of this later. This is part one of the Battle of Britain presentation. So here we have when the air raid sirens would go off, of course, people would be getting up in the middle of the night, having to rush down with their kids. If their kids hadn't been already brought to the countryside, out of the cities to protect them, a lot of them were rushed into, of course, the subway tunnels, where sometimes they would stay for hours. Some of them even began to live down there, um, which they were protected from the bombs. And sometimes when they would come up underground, some family members had died. Thousands of people had died. Their homes had been destroyed. You see here in pictures. Um, and the Royal Air Force each time was taking bit by bit chunks from fighters and bombers from the Luftwaffe, from the German Air Force. Fighting back was key. And during the Battle of Britain, it was actually found out that the British were actually producing more aircraft, started producing at a higher rate of aircraft than even the Germans at the time. They could produce fighters quicker. Those fighters were the Spitfire, Mark 1s, and eventually Mark 2s and beyond, and the Mark 1 Hurricanes, Hawker Hurricanes, developed by Canadians. So here it just is more of what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm going to get more deeper into the Blitz. Here's a Heinkel HE-111 and then Ju-88 bombers Um, yeah, these are actually DO-17s, which are underpowered bombers. Sorry, I just had glanced away and I didn't realize, oops, I'm talking about DO-17s and not Ju-88s. Anyway, the Ju-88s are major power bomber. Definitely has a lot more power than the DO-17s, which are underpowered. Um, then so the Ju-88s became a major medium bomber um, for force to be reckoned with the medium-sized bomb load. It actually the Luftwaffe was not designed as a major heavy bomber carpet bombing bomber force. It was used as that, but it was more it's designed more as a quick tactical bombing force, and these are medium bombers. They didn't have any major strategic bombers, and of course that would come later on. But strategic bombing was a thing, but carpet bombing became the term later on, um, a more used term later on, anyway. Um, so the Battle of Britain, 10th of July to 31st of October, 1940. Was the first battle of the Second World War fought mainly in the air. After nearly 4 months of anxious combat, the Royal Air Force's RAF Fighter Command stopped the German Air Force's attempt in advance of a planned invasion to dominate the skies over southern and eastern England. Hundreds of Canadian air and ground crew participated in the battle, most as members of the RAF themselves. So here we have some famous paintings of, and these are the Spitfires. Either these are the Mark Ones or Mark Twos Spitfires. Um, so when Britain declared war on Germany on September 3rd, 1939, the RAF was still in the process of building up its strength. Its pre-war focus on the strategic bombing of German targets had gradually given way to the need for an active defense against enemy aerial attack on Britain. Now, the British had 1,946 aircraft compared to the Germans 2,500 at least. And the British at the start of this had 650 fighters, and of course the Germans had well over 1,000, 1,500. Just looking at the numbers here. So of course, initially deployed of aircraft of fighter aircraft, and they had 3,000. I thought it was something around 24, 2,500. But they say that the numbers vary for different sources. So 3,000. So I'm just brushing up on my memory here. So yes, 3,000. Amazing. The amount of, but of course, as I mentioned, the British were able to produce them quicker. But the real worry was about running out of pilots. So technological innovations such as radar and a new generation of monoplane single-wing fighters, the Hawker Hurricane and the Supermarine Spitfire were linked together by a unique command and control system under the authority of Fighter Command. Supplying a significant number of pilots was a problem, but aggressive recruiting in both Britain and the far-flung dominions of the British Empire, including Canada, brought in new recruits at a steady pace. And that's including Poland and Czechoslovakia. The Czechoslovakian 312th Wing and the that squadron, and then the 303 squadron, Polish squadron and those crews were mainly um, Hawker Hurricane pilots. The primary objective of the German forces was to compel Britain to agree to a negotiating peace settlement. In July 1940, the air and sea blockade began, with the Luftwaffe mainly targeting coastal shipping convoys, ports, and shipping centers such as Portsmouth. On 1st of August, the Luftwaffe was directed to achieve air superiority over the RAF, with the aim of incapacitating RAF Fighter Command. 12 days later, it shifted the attacks to RAF airfields and infrastructure. As the battle progressed, the Luftwaffe also targeted factories involved in aircraft production and strategic infrastructure. Eventually, it employed terror bombing on areas of political significance and on civilians, and that's the Blitz, such as in London. So, Hugh Dowding, he served as a fighter pilot and then as commanding officer of 16th Squadron during the First World War. During the interwar years, he became air officer commanding fighting area air defense of Great Britain, and then joined the Air Council as air member for supply and research. He was air officer commanding RAF Fighter Command during the Battle of Britain, and is generally credited with playing a crucial role in Britain's defense and hence the defeat of Adolf Hitler's plan to invade Great Britain. He was replaced in command in November 1940 against the wishes with big wing advocate Sholto Douglas. At the time of his retirement in June 1939, Dowding was asked to stay on until March 1940 because of the tense international situation. He was again permitted to continue through the Battle of Britain until July and finally until November 1940. In 1940, Dowding, nicknamed Stuffy by his men for his alleged lack of humor, proved unwilling to sacrifice aircraft and pilots in the attempt to aid Allied troops during the Battle of France. He, along with his immediate superior, Sir Cyril Newall, then Chief of the Air Staff, resisted repeated requests from Winston Churchill to weaken the home defense by sending precious squadrons to France. When the air resistance in France collapsed, he worked closely with Air Vice Marshal Keith Park, the commander of 11th Fighter Group, in organizing cover for the evacuation of the British Expeditionary Force at Dunkirk. Through the summer and autumn of 1940, in the Battle of Britain, Dowding's fighter command resisted the attacks of the Luftwaffe beyond the critical importance of the overall system of integrated air defense, which he had developed for fighter command. His major contribution was to marshal resources behind the scenes, including replacement aircraft and aircrew, and to maintain a significant fighter reserve, while leaving his subordinate commanders' hands largely free to run the battle in detail. So that's Dowding here. That's his picture. Keith Park, promoted to the rank of Air Marshal, Park took command of Number 3 Group RAF, responsible for the fighter defense of London and southern England in April 1940. He organized fighter patrols over France during the Dunkirk evacuation, and in the Battle of Britain, his command took the brunt of the Luftwaffe's air attacks. Flying his personalized Hawker Hurricane around his fighter airfields during the battle, Park gained a reputation as a shrewd tactician with an astute grasp of strategic issues and as a popular hands-on commander. However, he became embroiled in an acrimonious dispute with ambitious Air Vice Marshal Trafford Leigh-Mallory, commander of 12 Group. Leigh-Mallory, already envious of Park for leading the key 11 Group, while number 12 Group was left to defend airfields, repeatedly failed to support number 11 Group. Leigh-Mallory and his big wing, led by Douglas Badour, often ran amok through number 11 Group airspace, confusing the UK defenses. Great. Trafford Leigh-Mallory, here he is. During the pre-Second World War buildup, he was air officer commanding AOC, 12 Squadron Fighter Squadron Group, and shortly after the end of the Battle of Britain, took over command of 11th Fighter Squadron Group, Fighter Group, defending the approach to London. In 1942, he became the Commander-in-Chief CNC of Fighter Command, before being selected in 1943 to be the CNC of the Allied Expeditionary Air Force, which made him the Air Commander for the Allied invasion of Normandy. November 1944, en route to Ceylon to take up the post of Air Commander-in-Chief, Southeast Asia Command, his aircraft crashed in the French Alps, and Lee Mowry, his wife, and 8 others were killed. He was one of the most senior British officers and the most senior RAF officer to be killed in the Second World War. No, I didn't know that. Most senior. Quentin Brand. During the Second World War, Brand was air officer commanding a number 10 fighter group, 10th Fighter Battle Group, responsible for the defense of southwest England and South Wales. Brand actively supported Air Vice Marshal Keith Park in advancing in advocating the use of small, rapidly deployed groups of fighters to intercept Luftwaffe raiders. Under Brand's command, 10th Group played a vital under Brand's command, 10th Group played a vital role in the Battle of Britain by defending southwest England against Luftwaffe's raids and providing support to 11 Group, which bore the brunt of the battle in southeast England as required. He later became Air Officer commanding number 20 Training Group. So that's, and there's more data for later on. Richard Saul. During the Second World War, Saul was Air Officer commanding number 13 Squadron. Number 13 Group, I say Squadron. Number 13 Group. From 1939, Air Officer commanding a number 12 Group from 1940, and then Air Officer commanding of Air Defenses Eastern Mediterranean from 1943. Lloyd Samuel Bredner. He's Canadian. So this is the man in charge of many of the Canadian men, and so he was promoted. He was promoted to squadron leader in 1920, and transferred to the Royal Canadian Air Force on its formation in 1924. He became controller of civil aviation in 1922, and later commanded Camp Borden from January 15, 1924 to September 1925. He was promoted to wing commander in April 1st, 1924. After attending RAF Staff College, he was the director of the RCAF from February 15th, 1928 to April 29th, 1932. From 32 to 35, he commanded Trenton and then attended Imperial Defense College. He was promoted to Group Captain on February 1st, 1936, and to Air Commodore on August 4th, 1938. He became Chief of Air Staff on May 29th, 1940, and having been promoted to Air Marshal on November 19th, 1941, became Air Officer Commanding in Chief RCAF overseas in January 1944. So he took part in operations in the Battle of Britain as well. Bredner was promoted on his retirement on, of course, November 25th, 1945, to Air Chief Marshal, the first Canadian to hold this rank. On November 30th, 1944, while he was Chief of Air Staff, his son, Flying Officer Donald Lloyd Bredner, was killed after an air gunnery exercise while flying a de Havilland Mosquito from RCAF Station Dibert in Nova Scotia. He was the only son of Bredner and his wife, Mary Evelyn. They also had 3 daughters. So that's one of the top commanders. That's the top Canadian commander in the, I believe, in the Battle of Britain. And one of the definitely top commanders of the RCAF, and the first commanding officer of the RCAF at the time. Albert Kesselring, German commander. So born 1885, was a German General Field Marshal of the Luftwaffe during the Second World War, who was subsequently convicted of war crimes. In a military career that spanned both world wars, Kesselring became one of Nazi Germany's most highly decorated commanders, being one of only 27 soldiers awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross with oak leaves, swords, and diamonds. Following the campaign in France, Kesselring's Luftflotte 2 was committed to the Battle of Britain. Luftflotte 2's headquarters was located in Brussels, Belgium. Kesselring's air fleet was numerically the strongest in the Luftwaffe in mid 1940. He controlled formations in the Netherlands, Belgium, and France north of the Seine, of the Sinai. Kesselring was initially responsible for the bombing of southeastern England and the London area, but as the battle progressed, command responsibility shifted, with General Field Marshal Hugo Speer's Luftflotte 3 assuming responsibility for the nighttime blitz attacks, while Luftflotte 2 conducted the main daylight operations. Kesselring was skeptical about attacking Britain. He advocated capturing Gibraltar, Operation Felix, encouraging the British government to negotiate, then turning against London if necessary. So he advocated capture. So he was abdicate. He advocated capturing, of course, Operation in Felix, and encouraging the British government to negotiate, and then turning against London. That was in, of course, in Gibraltar. Um, Spear favored attacking ports and shipping. Goring overruled them because he was sure the RAF fighter command was weak and could be defeated quickly. How wrong he was. The Luftwaffe air fleet commanders did not collaborate with each other to devise an air superiority plan, much less conduct inter-service conferences with the Army and Navy to develop a joint strategy. Kesselring, in particular, did not understand how the RAF fighter defenses worked, and even after the war, um, held the naive assumption fighter command could simply have been destroyed in dogfights. Here he is here. It's pictures of Kesselring himself. Hugo Speer, 1885 to 1953, was a German military aviator from the First World War, another First World War veteran, and a general field marshal in the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. In July 1940, Winston Churchill's government rejected peace overtures from Hitler. Hitler resolved to knock Britain out of the war. The OKL began tentative planning for Operation Eagle attack to destroy RAF fighter command to gain air superiority before supporting an amphibious landing in Britain, codenamed Operation Sea Lion. Speer thought the RAF could be defeated in passant. His personal strategy to attack ports and merchant shipping was overruled by Hermann Goering, ostensibly because the ports would be required for the invasion. Kesselring's contemporary notes indicate he thought air superiority could only be attained for a short time. Since most airfields and factories in Britain were out of range, Speer and Kesselring miscalculated, or were misled by intelligence into underestimating the number of fighter aircraft available to fighter command. They put the RAF total at 450 aircraft, when the real figure was, of course, 650 from one figure and 750, and that'd be fighters. And chronic intelligence failures on Britain's production, and which was much higher than what they thought it was. Defense systems and aircraft performance inhibited the German air operation throughout the battle. Joseph Schmid, the OKL's chief intelligence officer, was primarily responsible for providing inaccurate and distorted information to senior German air commanders, encouraging enormous overconfidence. So this is him, menacing looking figure. Going back to Kesselring. So Kesselring, definitely he has a lot of influence in the Battle of Britain, as you see here. Um, Kesselring was responsible for all Air Force units in northern Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, and northeastern France, while Speer was in control of forces in northern and western France. Luftflotte 3 was assigned Alfred Keller's Flaggerkorps 4, based in Brittany. Um, Weschhofen's Flaggerkorps 8 in the Charburg region, and Grimm's Flaggerkorps 5 in the Sinai River and Sinai area. No, Sinai area. Sorry. Precise boundaries between the air corps are not known. Um, the entire bomber strength of Spear's air fleet was reserved for night bombing. Spear's command did not begin large-scale daylight attacks until the last week of September. So Spear's first task against the British Isles was during Kannerkampf Channel Battle. The Kannerkampf Battle phase of what became known as the Battle of Britain, which would become known as. And the aim was to draw out fighter command into dogfights by attacking channel shipping, targeting British convoy systems. In July 1940, Spear's air fleet claimed 90 vessels sunk for approximately 300,000 tons. A third of this was claimed over August and September. The claims were widely optimistic. Over 35 ships were sunk during the Kanalkampf period. Spear was becoming disconcerted at the personnel rather than aircraft losses. Um, 2 days before Operation Eagle, scheduled for the 13th of August, he had lost two Gruppenkommander and a Stifle captain. Um, Spear knew he could not afford to lose experienced officers at such a high rate. Hans-Jürgen Stumpf. So during the Second World War, Stumpf commanded various Luftflotten. On the 19th of July 1940, Stumpf was promoted to the rank of General Oberst and awarded the Knights of the Iron Cross. Until the end of 1943, Stumpf commanded Luftflotte 5, with which he took part in the Battle of Britain. So he was part of that unit in the Battle of Britain, operating out of Norway against Scotland and northern England. Stumpf was a recipient of the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross of Nazi Germany. So, and then more data later on about him. And of course, in January 1944, Stumpf commanded Luftwaffe forces in the defense of the Reich command against the Allied bombing attacks. So on this is the interesting thing, and Stumpf I mentioned last time was, of course, one of the guys that was served on May 8, 1945, served as the Luftwaffe representative at the signing of the unconditional surrender of Germany in Berlin. Stumpf was released from British captivity in 1947, and he died in 1968. So he was there at the signing of the with the Allies, the signing of Germany's surrender. Rhino Carso Fugger. So 1894 in Bastia, 24th April 1963 in Rome. So Fortier, this is the Italian commander. So he was a Riga Aeronautica, Italian Royal Air Force in general, Italian Royal Air Force General. 1940 to 1941, he served as the commander of Corpo Aereo Italiano, which, in concert with the Luftwaffe, took part in the Battle of Britain. 1941 to 1943, he commanded the Regia Aeronautica, Aeronautica. he was awarded the German Cross in Gold in January 1943. So the Corps Aereo Italiano, or CAI, was an expeditionary force from the Italian um, Regia Aeronautica, the Italian Royal Air Force that participated in the Battle of Britain and the Blitz during the final months of 1940 during World War II. The CAI supported the German Air Force and flew against the British the RAF. Um, CAI achieved limited success during its brief existence, but it was generally hampered by the inadequacy of its equipment. So here's some of the early operations. On the night of the 24th, 25th October 1940, CIA conducted its first raid when 18 BR-20s took off to attack Harwich and Felixstowe. Not all aircraft found their targets, and 3 were lost in accidents. The Harwich Gun Defense Area (GDA), covering the ports of Harwich, Felixstowe, Ipswich, and Parkeston, were manned by the 99th London Welsh Heavy Anti-Aircraft Regiment, Royal Artillery. So, however, the number of heavy anti-aircraft guns in the GDA had dwindled to 8 by September 1940, as they had been redeployed to guard the RAF's vital fighter airfields. Um, they lost a number of aircraft in that for one of their first operations. So some of their they had some of the aircraft that took part in this were the Fiat CR-42. It was a maneuverable and fast biplane fighter, and of course, despite its good maneuverability and speed, 440 kilometers per hour plus, it was technically outclassed by the faster and better armed Hurricanes and Spitfires of the Royal Air Force. Fiat G50, there were 20 of those. This monotone fighter was restricted by its range of over 400 miles, which was roughly the same as that of the Bf-109E models used by the Luftwaffe, and the lack of a radio unit in most participating aircraft. You have no communications. You have no way to redirect fighters in an attack or in a defense position. Fiat BR-20 bombers. So the Stormer unit. The BR-20 was a twin-engine bomber capable of carrying 1,600 kilograms, 3,530 pounds of bombs. So supporting aircraft including 5 Kant Z 1007 used it for reconnaissance, and Caproni CA 133 transport aircrafts. So those are supporting aircraft. On 25th of September, the bombers arrived at their airfield in Millsbrook, Belgium, after an eventful journey in which several planes forced landed or even crashed due to malfunctions and poor weather. The fighters arrived later. 50 Fiat CR-42s were based at Ursel, while 45 Fiat G50s in Vlugplatz, Mendelgem, Belgium. So, and it is widely known that the Italians certainly had a large problem and were even ill-equipped, either as far as frontline equipment and also training, as well as logistics and their old and outdated equipment and unreliable equipment in North Africa as well. Rommel's military was not ready, and certainly it shows when Rommel has to come down and help to when the British are defeating the Italians, and of course the British at the time thought, well, we'll just push the Germans back too, but they were shocked at the ability of a field commander that Rommel was, and it certainly pushed the British back, and it certainly gave them a shock, uh, finding out how good a division level commander Rommel was. Um, so here is some of the bombers, and here is one of the fighter collection. Fiat, this is a CR-42 Falco. Falcon construction. This is number 920. This one here. The bottom. There's the bombers up here. So the Germans had rapidly overwhelmed France in the Low Countries. This is the big. So leaving Britain to face the threat of invasion by sea. The German High Command recognized the logistic difficulties of a seaborne attack and its impracticality while the Royal Navy controlled the English Channel and the North Sea. On the 16th of July, Hitler ordered the preparation of Operation Sea Lion as a potential amphibious and airborne assault on Britain to fall once the Luftwaffe had air superiority over the Channel. In September, RAF Bomber Command night raids disrupted the German preparation of converted barges, and the Luftwaffe's failure to overwhelm the RAF forced Hitler to postpone and eventually cancel Operation Sea Lion. The Luftwaffe proved unable to sustain daylight raids, but their continued night bombing operations on Britain became known as the Blitz. Historian Stephen Bungay, cited Germany's failure to destroy Britain's air defenses to force an armistice, or even an outright surrender, as the first major German defeat in World War II and a crucial turning point in the conflict. The Battle of Britain takes its name from the speech given by Prime Minister Winston Churchill to the House of Commons on the 18th of June. What General Weygard called the Battle of France is over. I expect that the Battle of Britain is about to begin. So just a bit more about strategic bombing in the First World War. Strategic bombing during the First World War, of course, on July 28, 1914, November 11, 1918, was principally carried out by the United Kingdom and France for the Entente powers and Germany for the Central Powers, the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente. All the belligerents of World War I eventually engaged in strategic bombing, and with the exception of only Rome and Lisbon, the capital cities of all the major European belligerents were targeted. A multinational air force to strike at Germany was planned but never materialized. So, a bit of history of strategic bombing. The aerial bombing of cities intended to destroy the enemy's morale was introduced by the Germans in the opening days of the war. Early strategic bombing attempts led to the development of specialized bomber aircraft during World War I. Initially, bombs were dropped by hand and aimed by the naked eye. But by the end of the war, bomb sights had been developed. The introduction of air raid warnings at shelters can be dated to World War I, as can the design of anti-aircraft artillery and the development of methods for coordinating aerial defense. Many of the advocates of strategic bombing during the interwar period, such as Italy's Giulio, Giulio Duhit, Giulio Dehut, America's Billy Mitchell, right, and Britain's Hugh Trenchard had commanded aircraft during World War One. The improvements in aircraft technology during and after the war convinced many that the bomber will always get through. And this belief influenced planning for strategic bombing during the Second World War. And it certainly did play that part in the German Blitz campaign, even though many bombers, in any given day, were shot down. Um, and, um, and the British really drew a lot of blood. Many bombers, of course, as you see, did get through and dropped thousands of tons of bombs on airfields and in London and other cities. So this is the German airship bombing Calais on the night of 21st, 22nd February 1915. So, The decision regarding attacks on London is reserved. So, this is what Hitler stated. Here's another famous painting of London and the bombing of London. So Hitler states the decision regarding attacks on London is reserved to me, says Hitler. Attacks on the English homeland are to be prepared, bearing in mind that inconclusive results with significant forces are to be avoided in all circumstances. Both France and the UK declared war on Germany, of course. And on October 9th, Hitler's Directive Number 6 planned the defensive, planned the offensive to defeat these allies and win as much territory as possible in the Netherlands, Belgium, and northern France to serve as a base for the successful prosecution of the air and sea war against England. And that's what, of course, this was the overall plan is defeat France, and then you get to take England, a domino effect. On 29th of November 1939, the OKW, German High Command, Directive Number 9, for the instructions of warfare against the economy of the enemy, stated that once the coastline had been secured, the Luftwaffe, together with the Kriegsmarine, the German Navy, was to blockade the UK ports with sea mines, attack shipping and warships, and make air attacks on shore installations and industrial production. This directive remained in force in the first phase of the Battle of Britain. It was reinforced on 24th May during the Battle of France by Directive Number 13, which authorized the Luftwaffe to attack the English homeland in the fullest manner as soon as significant forces were available. This attack will be opened by an annihilating reprisal for English attacks in the Ruhr Basin. By the end of June 1940, Germany had defeated Britain's allies on the continent, and on the 30th of June, the OKW Chief of Staff Alfred Jody issued his review of options to increase pressure on Britain to agree to a negotiated peace. The first priority was to eliminate RAF and gain air superiority. Intensified air attacks against shipping and the economy could affect food supplies and civilian morale in the long term. Reprisal attacks of terror bombing had the potential to cause greater capitulation, but the effect on morale was uncertain. Once the Luftwaffe had control over the air and the UK economy had been weakened, an invasion would be a last resort or a final strike. Todestos, after Britain had already been conquered, but could have a quick result. On the same day, the Luftwaffe Commander-in-Chief Hermann Göring issued the operational directive to destroy the RAF, thus protecting German industry and also to block overseas supplies to Britain. The German Supreme Command argued over the practicality of these options. In Directive Number 16, on preparations for a landing operation against England on 16th of July, Hitler required readiness by mid-August for the possibility of an invasion called Operation Sea Lion, which I've mentioned. Unless the British agreed to negotiations, the Luftwaffe reported that it would be ready to launch its major attack early in August. The Kriegsmarine Commander-in-Chief, Admiral Rader, continued to highlight the impracticality of these plans and said a sea invasion could not take place before early 1941. The German Navy just wasn't ready. 34 ships and maybe over 40 German U-boats against over 250 to nearly 300 British warships. The British Navy, the Royal Navy, was much stronger at the time. The Royal Navy was much stronger than the Kriegsmarine at the time, and of course, and the answer to that was a man who was in command of the German submarine fleet. That would be, of course, Karl Deonitz. And Deonitz was the commander and the brainchild of the German U-boat submarine fleet. He was the man who would um, build and require a massive submarine fleet, a U-boat fleet, to starve out Great Britain by attacking and destroying the British merchant marine fleet, which Great Britain, being a island power, that's vital to them. That is completely vital, and that is how that's the among one of the strongest economies in the world. Why? Because of the merchant ships, the largest merchant fleet in the world. So Hitler now argued that Britain was holding out in hope of assistance from Russia, and the Soviet Union was to be invaded. By mid-1941, Goring met his air fleet commanders and on 24th of July issued tasks and goals of firstly gained air supremacy. Secondly, um, so the first one of the tasks and goals of firstly gaining air superiority, air supremacy. Secondly, protecting invasion forces and attacking Royal Navy ships. Thirdly, they were to blockade imports, bombing harbors, and stores of supplies. So there's a lot to cover, and Battle of Britain is a lot. Consider it a war of attrition, but consider it a war of attrition, but a war of industry, of heavy industry, and certainly, um, if England did not have the Royal Navy, which was its strongest attribute alongside the Royal Air Force, um, then certainly Great Britain would have capitulated not shortly after France had, under the weight of German firepower. So you can see here, Germany has the capability, they have the space, and of course now they can put France, you use factories in France, and the French occupation, and even Vichy, eventually it was Vichy France, and in an occupied France, they would put factories in France. They would put factories for aircraft, tanks in production, and and the French people would work under a Nazi campaign. You see here, here's some of the Luftwaffe's heavy bombers or medium bombers here, gun crews. uh, so the bombing in the Second World War, as you can see here, you've got um, here we have Ju-88s, and then you can see there's some Do-17s. These are those there, some of the early anti-aircraft guns. Strategic bombing. Um, in the First World War, at the end of the First World War, you're basically looking down a sight with a bullseye on it, and you're looking down directly below you. And wherever that bullseye is, you flick the switch and you drop the entire bomb load. And that entire bomb load, or one bomb at a time, depending, um, will hopefully hit around that target. There's no guidance at all. It is directly, you're pointing at it and you're hoping you have a whole group of bombers that are going in, and they are trying to um, level an entire area. They call it carpet bombing because you're a rectangle area. You're targeting a rectangle area, and you're bombing it, and you're usually sending an entire squadron, an entire group of bombers to hit one or two factories. You're hitting one. There's no laser guidance. You're looking through a pickle barrel, and you're dropping. Now today you can look through a pickle barrel. It's like you look through it. Today you can target with a laser guide or GPS guided, and drop a bomb within centimeters at the target, destroying it utterly. Here you have to, as you can see here, you have men carrying um, the early bombs, which would be, of course, loaded up into aircraft and then dropped in mass in a rectangle area on whichever target you're targeting, that your group of bombers is targeting. And sometimes it would, sometimes you would miss, and you'd have to have another group come in. And this is all through the Second World War. This is, of course, during the daylight bombing raids over Germany, 1942 and 43, and certainly this is certainly the case in the Battle of Britain. You can see here the devastation is utter. Um, this is some of the most amazing footage of the Battle of Britain. Um, so here are the Spitfires, the Supermarine Spitfires. You have and the of course, and then the Hawker Hurricanes, and then those are Hawker Hurricanes there. Um, so numbers of strategies were definitely put into place with this certain battle. Certainly, it was a key battle. Um, Hitler's Directive Number 17 for the conduct of air and sea warfare against England, issued on 1st of August, attempted to keep all their options. Of course, they attempted to keep all their options open. The Luftwaffe's Aldertag campaign was to start around 5th of August, subject to weather, with the aim of gaining air superiority over southern England as a necessary precondition of invasion, to give credibility to the threat, and to give Hitler the option of ordering the invasion. Um, the intention was to incapacitate the RAF so much that the UK would feel open to air attack and would begin peace negotiations. It was also to isolate the UK and damage war production, beginning an effective blockade. Following severe Luftwaffe losses, Hitler agreed that at a September 14th OKW conference that the air campaign was to intensify regardless of invasion plans. On the 16th of September, Goring gave the order for this change in strategy to the first independent strategic bombing campaign. You can see here some of the strategies of fighter aircraft, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit as well. Is this some more of just more data about the planning of operations? So, some of the fighters. I'm going to talk about some of the aircraft, some of the kit. Luftwaffe's Messerschmitt Bf-109E and Bf-110C fought against the RAF's workhorse, the Hurricane Mark I, and the less numerous Spitfire Mark I. Hurricanes outnumbered Spitfires in RAF fighter command by about 2 to 1 when war broke out. The Bf-109E had a better climb rate and was up to 40 miles per hour faster in level flight than the Rotor constant speed propeller equipped Hurricane Mark I, depending on the altitude. Speed and climb disparity with the original non-Rotor Hurricane was even greater. By mid-1940, all RAF Spitfire and Hurricane fighter squadrons converted to 100 octane aviation fuel, which allowed their Merlin engines to generate significantly more power and an approximately 30 miles per hour increase in speed and at low altitudes. So this new fuel allowed increase in speed at low altitudes through the use of an emergency boost override. In September 1940, the more powerful Mark IIA Series 1 Hurricane started entering service in small numbers. This version was capable of a maximum speed of 342 miles per hour, 550 kilometers an hour, some 20 miles an hour more than the original non-Rotor Mark I, though it was still 15 to 20 miles per hour slower than the Bf-109 depending on altitude. Of course, you can tell the dip. So this is a Messerschmitt Bf-109E, I believe. The Messerschmitt is it's a well-deserved famous aircraft. And well-deserved in its fame. So is the Hurricane and the Spitfire. The Spitfire has more rounded engines, or sorry, rounded engines. The Spitfire has more rounded wings on the ends, whereas rounded meaning more oval, and they stretch out more, and they're more like an egg top. Whereas the Hawker Hurricane as they're more bluntly rounded, so they're more like a yeah, um, they're more wider rounded, but their rounding is shorter at the wing ends. So and they're a little bit they're a little bit smaller. Um, so you can see here, and that's exactly what I was talking about here. Here's the Spitfire, and here's the Hurricane. So um, there's a difference in a little bit, in size, and they could produce more Hurricanes than I could at the time in Spitfires, and then later on, of course, the Spitfire production certainly ramped up. So 2 to 1 in ratio availability. So that's just the British, but I'm talking now going back to the Germans. The performance of so here's the Spitfire, and comparing the Germans to the English. The performance of the Spitfire over Dunkirk came as a surprise to the Jadwaf. Although the German pilots retained a stronger belief that the 109 was the superior fighter, the British fighters were equipped with 8 Browning 303 7.7 machine guns, while most Bf 109Es had two 7.92 millimeter machine guns, supplemented by two 20 millimeter cannons. Um, the latter was much more effective than the 303 during the battle, and it was not unknown for um, damaged German bombers to limp home with uploads of to 200 303 hits. Wow, amazing. At some altitudes, the Bf 109 could outclimb the British fighter. It could also engage in vertical plane negative G maneuvers without the engine cutting out because its DB 601 engine used fuel injection, which this allowed the 109 to dive away from attackers more readily than the carburetor equipped Merlin engine. Um, on the other hand, the BF-109E had a much larger turning cycle than its two foes. Um, so the performance between the Spitfire and the ME-109 in performance and handling were only marginal, and in a combat scenario, they were almost always surmounted by tactical considerations of which side seen the other first, which had the advantage of sun, altitude, numbers, pilot ability, tactical situation, tactical coordination, and amount of fuel remaining, and ammunition as well, etc. So here's the BF-109E4B, and this is autumn 1940. And here it's equipped with I think it's 50 to 100 kilogram bomb. I'm not sure exactly which. Um, so this is the one of the major fighters, of course, that the Luftwaffe is using in the Battle of Britain. So the red writing Achtan Anfänger with white outlines means attention beginners. That's intimidation. The Hawker Hurricane is a British single-seat fighter aircraft in the 1930s and 40s that was designed and predominantly built by Hawker Aircraft Ltd. for service with the Royal Air Force. It was overshadowed in the public um, consciousness by the Supermarine Spitfire's role during the Battle of Britain 1940, but the Hurricane inflicted 60% of the losses sustained by the Luftwaffe in the engagement and fought uh, in all the major theaters of the Second World War. The hurricane originated from discussions between RAF officials and aircraft designer Sir Sidney Cam about a proposed monoplane derivative of the Hawker Fury biplane in the early 1930s. Despite an institutional preference for biplanes and lack of interest uh, from the Air Ministry, Hawker refined their monoplane proposal, incorporating several innovations which became critical to wartime fighter aircraft, including retractable landing gear and the more powerful Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. The Air Ministry ordered Hawker's interceptor monoplane in late 1934, and the prototype Hurricane K-5083 performed its maiden flight on 6 November 1935. June 1936, the Hurricane went into production for the Air Ministry. It entered squadron service on December 25th, 1937, my birthday many years before I was born. Its manufacture and maintenance was eased by using conventional construction methods so that squadrons could perform many major repairs without external support. The Hurricane was rapidly procured prior to the outbreak of the Second World War in September 1939, when the RAF had 18 Hurricane-equipped squadrons in service. The aircraft was relied on to defend against German aircraft operated by the Luftwaffe, including dogfighting with Messerschmitt Bf 109s, and later on, of course, then in the FW 190s in multiple theaters of action. So here is this is June 1940. Following the fall of France, 31 of Fighter Command's 61 fighter squadrons were equipped with Hawker Hurricanes. About 1,600 of these planes were built in Canada. 1,600 were built for the Royal Air Force fighting overseas, and we were equipped with them as well. And even Gagetown's 403 Squadron, um, they were equipped with. No, they were actually equipped with the Spitfire, but they also took place in the. They also participated in the Battle of Britain as well. They were equipped with the Spitfire, which is, of course, the sister aircraft of the Hurricane, but they were actually they participated in the Battle of Britain. Um, they now are the helicopter. 4-3 Squadron is the helicopter squadron with the Griffin helicopters in Gagetown. I've toured that unit. It's a lot of very good history. Um, so getting back to the Hurricanes, following the fall of France, 31 of fighters command 61 fighter squadrons were equipped with Hurricanes. Like I mentioned, 1,600 of them were made in Canada. That's throughout the war. The Battle of Britain officially lasted from 10th of July to 31st of October 1940, with the heaviest fighting, which took place between 8th of August and the 21st of September. Both the Supermarine Spitfire and the Hurricane are renowned for their part in defending Britain against the Luftwaffe. Generally, the Spitfire would intercept the German fighters, leaving Hurricane to concentrate on the bombers. But despite the undoubted abilities of the thoroughbred Spitfire, it was the workhorse Hurricane that scored the higher number of RAF victories during this period, accounting for 55% or more of the 2,739 German losses, according to Fighter Command, compared with 42% by Spitfires. On 8th of August 1940, Hurricanes of number 145 Squadron were recorded as having fired the first shots of the Battle of Britain. The highest scoring of the Hurricane Squadron during the Battle of Britain was number 303 Squadron, Polish fighter. That's the Polish fighter squadron. So they're the highest scoring Hurricane Squadron. This squadron also had the distinction of having the highest ratio of enemy aircraft destroyed to own losses suffered. Amazing. Here it is here in the side view. The Hurricane. All right, so I'm gonna okay. Yep. I'll talk more about the BF 109E. The BF 109E was also used as going back to the German one as a jet bomber, fighter bomber. The E4B, which you saw in the diagram earlier, and E7 models carry a 250 kilogram bomb underneath the fuselage. The later model arriving during the battle. Um, the BF 109, unlike the Stuka, could fight on equal terms with RAF fighters after releasing its ordnance. The Stuka can't do that. Stuka is mainly only a dive bomber. Um, At the start of the battle, the twin-engine Messerschmitt Bf 110C, a long-range destroyer, was also expected to engage in air-to-air combat while escorting the Luftwaffe bomber fleet. Although the 110 was faster than the Hurricane and almost as fast as the Spitfire, its lack of maneuverability and acceleration meant that it was a failure as a long-range escort fighter. It had two engines as well. It was heavier, definitely. On 13th and 15th of August, 13 and 30 air as on the 13th and 15th of August, 13 and 30 aircraft were lost, equivalent of an entire group. Um, and the type's worst losses during the campaign. This trend continued with a further 8 and 15 lost on the 16th and 17th of August, 1940. The most successful role of the BF 110 um, during the battle was as a snail bomber, fast bomber. The BF 110 used a shallow dive to bomb the target and escape at high speed. One unit is bombing groups 10 to 10 and initially formed as the service test unit. Um, Iperbong's commando for the emerging successor to the 110, the ME 210, um, proved that the BF 110 still be used to good effect in attacking small or pinpoint targets. So the 110 was not the greatest fighter in its capability, but as a fast bomber, is better equipped. This concludes part one of the Battle of Britain.